Hey, what's up, Leafy? How are we?
What's going on? Doing well, how are you?
Doing well. Here we are. We are officially live on stereo. We have a lot of people coming in from Instagram, Twitter, wherever that probably haven't seen this app. So, give you guys a quick rundown. We're just going to do a nice little talk show for you guys here. Me and Leafy, we're going to talk about NHL 22, NHL 21, give you guys feedback on everything going on, and also just talk about kind of our YouTube journeys, how we've gotten to where we are, and kind of where we see things going. So, it should be a pretty good show. Leafy, thanks for hopping
Yeah,
on. It's gonna be a good one.
yeah, excited. I've never done any sort of podcasting or anything, so a little nervous. I don't really know what to expect, but it should be a good time.
Yeah, I haven't either. And the good thing about stereo is like literally this is just very low key. We're just chilling, talking about whatever. People will be throwing in questions along the way that we'll have the chance to answer. So I think just to get things started, a lot of people probably know who I am, but I think if you want to just give a quick rundown of your YouTube channel, kind of when you got started with the NHL series and how this came to be.
Yeah, sure. So I've played NHL for honestly like my whole life. I don't even know when I started, but forever. Yeah, I played it a lot. I got really into it. I played like, sixes leagues and stuff for a bit. And after that, I kind of started getting into Hut and stuff as well. When that started coming out and got really popular. Then in those sixes leagues, kind of met like people in the community, got really immersed in it, met a lot of people, a lot of friends, and got really into that. And eventually, started making like some like written content, like talking about feedback and like what I think would improve the game, and like doing reviews when we had betas and stuff, writing stuff on what I thought, a lot of feedback stuff. So I got into the GameChanger program after that. I guess people kind of took notice. So Flopfish, and who was the community manager at the time, added me in there, and that was really exciting. And from there, I started streaming and doing YouTube stuff after that. Some NHL, a lot of NHL, and then some other stuff as well. I've done more like variety stuff lately, but yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I think it's been pretty cool just to see your growth. I think this year in particular, you started to kind of take it a bit more seriously, actually having a schedule. And I know you were only on Twitch before, and now you've started to do some more YouTube stuff as well. I just wanted to ask you in regards to that. I know for me, it's very difficult. Like you've built up your audience for just NHL content, and that's kind of what the people want to see. Do you feel like you're able to like switch over to other games? How's that kind of going for you so far?
Yeah, it's different, for sure. You don't get like quite exactly the same audience. I feel like I have like a core community that's kind of there to watch me for me, right? And they're kind of there to watch the content that I make rather than only there for NHL. But I think with sports games a lot, especially, it's really hard because the audiences for those kinds of games are definitely just there to watch, like, the hot menus or whatever. So there's a challenge there, and you definitely have lower viewership and things like that. But it's also like it's a lot more fun, like personally. The thing about it is like you get really burnt out, in my opinion. At least like I do. I don't know if maybe not everybody who streams NHL does, but you get really burnt out streaming the same thing for so many hours every single day. And so it's really nice to branch out. I feel like the content itself is better, even though the numbers aren't as good. But there's you still see the growth, especially if you're consistent with it. So it's been a lot of fun. It's been an interesting experience, but I've really been enjoying it.
Yeah, I think I've gone through something very similar. Like you want to start playing some different games, and you just know the audience isn't going to be as big. But I think it's cool that you're willing to just hop in and do that. I think you can really start to grow more of a community that kind of tunes in to watch your stuff versus someone that just wants to see NHL gameplay. Like I think an example of it that comes to mind for me is just like the golf streams that me and like No Sleeves and some other people were
Yeah.
doing. Like I personally have never really even played golf, never streamed golf, but for some reason there was like a connection, and I think I got a lot of new eyes on the stream that would have never found me, that now have like started to watch and love hockey because they found me, through golf. So I definitely, I like what you're doing. I think, we can use some more of that in the NHL community. I think a lot of us are just very set in stone on the games we play. So
Yeah, no,
it's
for
very
sure.
very good to see more of that.
Yeah, but like I said, I mean, the thing is too, like those some of those golf streams. I mean, I remember watching a couple of them, and like it was really like there's some hype moments, like a lot of stuff, like just new experiences in general that you bring to the audience. And I think like sometimes you get too much into the motions, and you kind of miss out on some really good content that you could have been making otherwise.
100%. Yeah. And speaking of good content, I think before we get into, the game changers and NHL 22, I do want to ask you one more thing. You had the chance to hop on that NHL 21. It was like kind of an early access sneak peek
Yeah.
tournament sort of thing. I'm just curious how that happened, because I know there's a lot of people that are kind of in your position that, they're making YouTube videos, they're just getting started. Like, did the NHL approach you? What was kind of the steps that led to that opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it wasn't really even anything. It kind of came out of nowhere. Yeah, the NHL kind of just sent me a message one day, and I was crazy. I didn't even know who it was. Like, they just sent me, I think, a Twitter DM like one day, and they were like, "Hey, I work with the NHL esports. We're doing something, and want you involved?" And it was really cool. It was a ton of fun. Everybody involved with it was a lot of fun. Um, yeah, it was I wish I had like a little bit more insight to give, but honestly I think it's just like I was active, and they were trying to they added in some people that maybe aren't always the ones involved in every single event. Like a lot of times, they have like that one in New York a couple years back where like everybody was there and they were ripping packs. I think you were there, and like Tactics and Sod and Nuge and stuff. And I think like a lot of those guys, are the ones that you would expect to see in a lot of these events. So they kind of like branched out a little bit and went for some different people, and it was an interesting cast. But yeah, they kind of just sent me a message one day, and I was blown away. It was really cool.
Yeah, I think I really like what the NHL did with that one and bringing on, like, we kind of had a mix of, some NHL players, some journalists, and then, I think you and Thrash kind of stood out for me. They had actually reached out to me, and they mentioned both your names, and I was like, 100%, like they have to
Yeah.
be on. I know that they're going to be entertaining and make it fun, and good thing that we had you on, because we got the good old patented, I don't know, leafy flip, whatever you want to call it, that now has stuck to the community to this day.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun with that. The whole thing for me was just I want to make sure that it's fun to watch, because I know like everybody's gonna be hyped for the new game, and there was all the promos for the new game and stuff had the like new moves and whatnot. And none of us even knew the buttons for them yet, but yeah, I really just wanted to hopefully put on a good showing. So I'm glad it was entertaining, and I had a lot of fun participating in it.
Yeah, well, yeah, it was certainly entertaining, and we all appreciated that. So I think now we'll kind of dive into NHL 21. So we had the little pre-release tournament. I'm curious now, whatever it is, five months into the game, kind of what your overall thoughts are on the game. Obviously, you've done a lot of research and done some surveys to get people's thoughts on the game. And I'm curious, just from your perspective, how do you feel like the game plays? Are you happy with it? What would you like to see change? Just general thoughts.
Yeah, so, right now I'm not the biggest fan of the current state of the game. I don't think I play mostly like 1v1 stuff, so I'm not speaking super much, like I'm not speaking a lot on 6v6. But in terms of HUT and versus, it feels like the gameplay is pretty repetitive. I remember, it's actually funny because I was thinking about this earlier today. I remember like really early on in the game cycle, you had made a tweet or like a video like linking together all the goals that you had in one game, and there's like 15 goals, and they were all cross creases. Um, and that, I mean, it's funny that that's kind of stuck with it, right? Because we're at the end of February now, and I mean, I was playing the game today. I was actually streaming today for the first time in a while, and it did feel like that. It feels really repetitive, and there's just not a whole lot of creativity happening right now, which is unfortunate because of they keep adding new deeks and everything, and they just don't really seem like they're ever making it into the meta of the game. Um, But yeah, that's pretty much like as far as gameplay goes. And then with Hut, like, there's people a lot of complaints about like every set is kind of the same because it's all gold collectibles, so there's not really a whole lot of variety there. Which I do like kind of agree with, but it's an interesting topic for sure. But yeah, I don't play a whole lot of offline, so I don't really have a whole lot to say on like franchise Be a Pro stuff. But I know people have like the new Be a Pro stuff. It's not really for me.
Yep. Yeah, I think I mean all the points you made are very fair, and I think it's what kind of a lot of the people are feeling. I remember when I sent out that tweet about the cross crease goals. It was kind of controversial at the time because it was so early on in the game, and people felt like I was like kind of rushing to conclusions. But I feel like as time has gone on, I don't know what's exactly going on behind the scenes. Maybe EA has decided to really set their focus on NHL 22 as they're moving over to the next generation and all the complications that would result in that. But yeah, I feel like the core gameplay really has not changed at all over the course of the year. I mean, they've had a few patches here and there, and it's just very minor details, minor glitches that were in the game that got patched up. But all in all, like you said, the meta has kind of been the same the entire time. So I am curious to see kind of what the going forward, how this is going to look in NHL 22. I think the cross crease definitely is something that needs to be addressed. And also, you touched on it too, the creativity. Like we have all these dekes that are disposable. We have the chip deke, we have, the Kucherov and the Michigan, and they're all moves that are cool. And I love that they're in the game, but they also just are not very effective. You don't see them a lot in high level play. Like we were watching the Leafs gaming streams, just doing like some scouting, and you don't see much creativity. It's cross crease after cross crease, and occasionally you get like a guy that puts it between his legs and then throws it backdoor. It's just it feels like you said repetitive, and I think with the rise of esports, like we really need to find a way to just have each goal feel special and feel different.
Yeah, and I mean, like, the thing is that you don't want to say, too much about cross creases just because it is, like, a really common way to score, like, in hockey. Like, it's a good opportunity. But it becomes a problem when it's, like, pretty much every goal, right? And, that's kind of what people are sick of at this point is that there's really no reason to even try to do other stuff. And I think that's the problem with those deeks is that not only are they like sometimes unreliable in terms of like the success rate and actually like being able to do a between the legs deke and like some simple stuff like that, but also just like why do it when you can just not instead and probably have more success avoiding those moves too and making things more complicated. um and yeah, so that's kind of what the big thing with the community right now is that it's pretty rare, I think, to go through like what are we, like you said, 4 or 5 months in the game now and not really seeing any big tuners or anything that has really changed the game much. I think like honestly EA's been like a little notorious at times in certain years for maybe being a little bit too aggressive on tuners at some points. Like a lot of people, one thing that people always say is that the game's really good on release and then they release that first month tuner and everything's ruined or whatever. And yeah, they didn't even really do that this year.
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, it's tough when you have like, especially when there's so much money on the line. Like, you don't want the game to change. It's not like you want the game to completely change overnight with a $20,000 tournament coming up the next week or whatever the
Mm.
case may be. So I definitely understand their perspective of kind of wanting to stay true, but yeah, I wouldn't mind some bigger gameplay patches, along the way, and I think everyone can
Just
kind of agree on that.
even something like just a little something to shake it up. Just because like I said, people are really feeling like things are a bit stale right now, and that's never. I mean, that's just simply never a good thing.
Exactly. Yep. And hey, if anyone in the chat right now, if you're listening and you have any questions for either me or Leafy, you can go ahead and hold. There's a little icon there at the bottom. If you hold that, you can record a message that we can then play over the air. We'll answer your questions live. So feel free to get as many as you can in. So now I want to move on to your role kind of as a game changer. I know you're a pretty prominent game changer just in terms of I feel like you kind of have a big impact. Like you've gone out of your way to take extra steps. You have your surveys that you fill in, and you have spreadsheets of data of what people are asking for and wanting. What have you heard this year in maybe like going into NHL 22? What is like the number one feature that people ask for, whether it's gameplay or just an actual game mode or whatever it may be?
GM connected.
Of course, class.
Yeah, is always number one. Honestly, I think people say it less now because they've just like gone back to that so many times. It's been everything that we've heard for so many years now, and yeah, that's number one always, no matter when I'm asking the questions or who I'm asking the questions to. People always want GM Connected back, even though, I mean, it was at the time not really played, but it was also not very good. And nobody wants their modes taken away, so yeah, that's the big one, for sure. I mean, like, it's just, I mean, it's true, every other sports game has it. There's really not much of a reason why it's not in the game, other than, I guess it didn't, like, because it didn't, like, it wasn't played so much that they didn't feel like they needed to bring it back. I don't know, but yeah, that's the big one. As far as franchise mode, I mean, pretty big on roster sharing too. I think people forget sometimes about the offline communities, but they're actually like really big. Franchise. I mean, you look at like even just YouTube numbers. Franchise and Beta Pro actually do really really well. Compared to like on Twitch, it's mostly run into Hut, but on YouTube it's actually pretty big. So those communities are huge, and they're very vocal about what they want out of their NHL game. So yeah, those are two huge ones: roster sharing, GM connected, and then as far as gameplay goes, it really varies. I think like everything's kind of related to how the game is right now, and so like I said, it's really not necessarily something specific. Like in years past, you wanted bumps to be nerfed, right? There was that, I think it was NHL 19, where every time you got near somebody, you would just get bumped and lose the puck, and that was kind of like a big point for people to say like this specific thing needs a problem. For this year, it's a little bit different, because like the big complaint is the cross creases and like just the fact that there's not a whole lot of variety in the gameplay. So you have to get a little bit more creative with what you really want out of it. But I think like the big thing a lot of the time is either, somehow making like somehow making players like, I don't know, harder to hold on to the puck, but also not like getting bumped all the time, and then also having like consistent pickups and stuff when you're forcing the puck across, um rather than being able to just force it through, things like that.
The stuff you mentioned about NHL 21, like I feel like a lot of it can come back to what people ask or what people want from FIFA, which is like, the star players really stand out on there. With Messi and Ronaldo, it feels like an entirely different game when you have them controlling the ball. Do you feel like that's something that NHL has kind of been lacking over the years, like the difference between the first and fourth liners?
Yeah, for sure. I think when you play like a versus game, you definitely notice it, but most people don't really play versus games, right? So, it's definitely not the most popular modes. I think that's definitely something that people complain about, and that would definitely help, just because like, you find situations where, you have Connor McDavid and you're on a breakaway, or you're like on like a half break, but then you don't actually break away, like somebody catches you. And I think that's definitely something that you hear pretty often from people, is that, why does this happen? That doesn't make any sense. Even if like, it's not like an end of the shift situation where it actually does make sense. But yeah, I think that would definitely help. It would add some strategy to the games too, like just being aware of when the other person's key players are on the ice, and like knowing, what kind of threats they pose. Because I think like right now with the attribute limits, you don't really have a lot of those fine details of hockey in him. Like for instance, you have a player like Crosby who, obviously like an incredible talent like all over the ice, but um specifically like you know him for like a couple things: amazing edge work, amazing backhand, right? But neither of those things are really anything that you're gonna find in an NHL video game. Like you can't really put that into an attribute, at least within the limits of the current game. So you don't have something that makes it so that he had, other than like balance, which doesn't even really do him too much justice because like it's so dependent on size in NHL. And he's, I think, 5'11", right? So yeah, it doesn't really, you don't really get that feeling of actually using Sidney Crosby because you don't have those edges. You don't have we don't even have a backhand rating. So I think that would definitely help for sure.
Yeah, it's always kind of blown my mind that there's not a backhand stat because that's like such a, it's such a big part of the game.
It seems like such a basic thing that should be in that just never made it in. I don't know.
I'll admit, even myself though, like there's a lot of things like that that, for the longest time, like I've never even thought about that. Like I'm just like, oh, wrist shot power, slap shot power. Oh, I guess that's all you need, But when you actually
Yeah.
get down into it, there's a lot of like small things like that that I feel like EA doesn't really address. And you look at the attributes list, and a lot of the things are set in stone. Like we said, speed, wrist shot accuracy, that stuff makes sense. But then they add in those wild cards where it's like defensive awareness. They give you the description, but it's like, what really is that? So I think it'd be cool if
Yeah.
maybe I don't know if it's less stats or more stats, different stats, whatever it is, but I feel like there just has to be a better breakdown of, this is what this stat does. You can put it all the way up in game and you can like instantly see and feel the differences. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think those ones like defensive awareness can really be broken down pretty well too. Like you could have different stats for defensive positioning, like pass interceptions, gap control, things like that that would also help like with not only understanding what the attributes actually do, but then also like differentiating players as well.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. Like breaking down, some of the stats probably don't need to be in the game, and then others need to be really broken down into, three or even four categories, like you said. We do have a
Yeah.
question in the queue. I was going to go ahead and play this one. We'll see who is asking this.
Sure, go ahead.
Hey guys, while we're talking about the future of not just NHL with NHL 22, with the somewhat recent announcement of EA Sports coming back into college football, do we feel like this could also be an open door for EA Sports college hockey as well? Could they try to cash in on that market? Because I feel like that could be a decent moneymaker for them. That's just me. What do you guys think?
Hey, Tizoki, appreciate the question, brother. That's a good one. Personally, I think if we're just looking at it objectively, I don't think that there would be a separate, EA college hockey game. I don't see that really being big enough of a market to work, especially when you consider like Canadian college hockey is definitely not as big down as in the U.S. They focus on juniors and their different leagues. So I wouldn't say that there's going to be like a completely separate game like NCAA football, but I do think there definitely is potential for there to be a integrating those cards into their own little game mode within the game, like having a college hockey mode, or maybe in Be a Pro, you start out in college and then you work your way up to the juniors and then to the NHL. Or there's all different sorts of paths that you can take. So that'd be my thoughts. What do you think, Leafy?
Yeah, I'm pretty much 100% on board with that. I don't think that college hockey really has the community behind it to pour its own game. I mean, like we already know that NHL itself is the smallest in terms of popularity as far as this major sports games go, and like trying to break that down even further would be a big ask. I don't think there would really be the support for it to have its own thing, but if they end up actually getting, this whole NCAA thing sorted out, I think it would be a really cool opportunity to, like you said, integrate NCAA into NHL. And it would solve some problems that people have with like the franchise stuff, where you have to end up like, if you really want like it to be sim or whatever, you have to like add in certain college players and prospects for teams that they don't have the rights to. So that would be pretty cool too, because then you would have like all the college prospects that are currently left out of the game until they play a game for an NHL team.
Yep, exactly. That's like a big thing is always the complaints about, getting certain cards into the game. And a lot of the
Yeah.
time, I think they have to like play a certain amount of NHL games for them to be considered in the NHLPA and then for EA to have the rights. So it would definitely like skip that extra step and just give them the chance to have different athletes and different cards available. Obviously, there's all sorts of stuff behind the scenes that we won't jump into today, just in regards to paying the college players and using their rights in the game and how that would work, because that's just a legal disaster that no
Yeah.
one really has the answers to. But hopefully someday we will see that.
Yeah, and I mean, again, like you said, it's also like opens up doors for the like be a pro journey and stuff like that, where you could start in college instead of doing juniors or whatever, and it would be cool, but maybe not. I guess we'll see.
Exactly. So I do want to hop in. I have a couple questions for you. I think a lot of people in the NHL community, you see little rants and whatnot on Twitter regarding the EA game changers. So I'm curious in hearing your thoughts. Since you've joined the program, kind of what you feel like your role is, what you feel like the game changers role is, and if you feel like you're actually having an impact on the game, or if EA is actually kind of listening to you.
Okay, well, that's a big question. Um, yeah, so I first off, like, I'm grateful for the opportunity for sure. I've really enjoyed being part of the program, and I'm not just saying that, there's nothing forcing me to say that on here. So, but yeah, it happens a lot. I think we do get blamed and kind of end up like meat shields for the people's complaints a little bit. Personally, I never really take it to heart. I think, like, honestly, I generally get pretty good feedback from people and pretty good interactions with people on socials. Maybe it's because I, like, really go out of my way to gather feedback from, like, every person that I can. And, people take that and I really appreciate that. I don't know. But generally, I feel like I'm not really so much under fire, but I definitely see it from other people and against other people. Um, I think it's a little bit misplaced, but at the same time, I don't blame anyone. Obviously, it's this game that we're so passionate about, and people play so many hours into and really just want to see it do well. And it feels like, definitely a lot of the time that there's some missed opportunities for that. So you want to place blame somewhere, and it's the easiest thing that you can do, I guess, is blame the people that are supposed to be helping the game, right? But as far as my role and what I think I should be doing, there's different ways to approach it. I think you can have, like all of us are handpicked essentially either by community members or community manager, because like the original ones were voted on, I believe. But so you have these people that are all there for a reason. And because like EA believes that we have good ideas and something to contribute. So there's a couple ways that you can really go about it. Is you can use it as your platform to promote your ideas and what you think about the game personally. And then there's like kind of what I do, which I do some of that. I do that as well. I have my thoughts on the game. I like, for instance, I would love a more arcade NHL. Like that's my dream, is to go back to less sim and more fun. But that's not what everybody thinks, and so that's more of what I advocate for. Like when I'm writing my own thoughts on things, or when I'm in discussion, I'm saying this is what I think would be more fun, and it doesn't always go that way, because you have to, you talk to the developers, but they have their own vision and their own plan, and you kind of like what they're doing is trying to take what they hear from the community and what they hear from us, and kind of line that up with their vision, and fit it all together in the best way possible, I guess, is like the ideal way that that goes. And so for me, that is my opinion. And I do advocate for that, but I also thought that using the Game Changer title and role was a really good opportunity to actually get into what does the community really want. I think like way back when a couple years ago when I first went to Vancouver, we had this big meeting at the end of our event where like we were essentially doing like this big presentation in front of like the whole production and development team, all the producers, the big people that work on the game and the people that are in charge of all the different things on NHL. And like the job was essentially like we were presenting the big points. It wasn't all related to the specific game because we were there early in the dev cycle, so like the gameplay was really incomplete and not like a representative at all of the finished product or what it ended up being. But yeah, so it was like a very discussion based event where we just like we had like tons and tons of meetings with all the different people. And I got this idea like when we were prepping for this presentation together, and everybody was tweeting out. They were like, what, we have this big meeting with EA today. If there was like, something you wanted me to tell them, what would it be? And I was reading through like some of the comments on my tweets and the other Game Changer tweets, and I had this idea, and I was like, they always say you can't say everybody wants this, right? Because it's not true. Like, not everybody wants an arcade game, or not everybody wants I don't know, cross creases to be different, right? Just for example, like it's simply not true that that's like a thought from everybody. It might be the most common thing, but it's not always what everybody thinks. So I had the idea that I was going to do this big spreadsheet. I was actually going to get data. I was going to say, I took a snapshot of all these tweets and all these posts and everything, and here's actual data that shows what people actually want. And so I thought it would be a really good way to kind of make a case for things, because at the time, that was the year that bumps were really bad. But you can't, go into an argument with Ben Ross and say everybody wants bumps to be nerfed and just expect that he's gonna fix it. So what I did was I took numbers and I said, here is 600 people that gave me different things that they want from the game, and this many people said nerf bumps. That's a pretty high percentage. You should probably fix that. And it kind of worked. I mean, I didn't know what was going to come of it. I didn't know what they were actually going to do with that information, or, what they wanted from it. Because it was kind of just a fun project for me, something that I thought would be interesting. And then I found out later that, like, the creative director, like, one of the top head people at EA, or EA NHL anyway, was using that spreadsheet, like, while they were going through their process, the whole, like, their direction and deciding what they were doing for the next year. And I was like, this is crazy. Like, this is bigger than I thought it was going to be for sure, right? Because it was, like I said, for me, it was just like a fun project to see, and I mean, it took so much time to actually like count through all that stuff. So the next year, like, I did a forum, and I didn't do the spreadsheet, but I still sent them like everything that I did with the forum. And then this year, I've just been tweeting out like different questions and trying to just get a feel for what people think. But yeah, I mean, that's how I approach it. Like I said, it's you have different ways that you can go about it. I don't think that any way is necessarily correct, even though maybe my way is more appreciated by people. But yeah, I mean, I just, I have a lot of fun with it. I love just reading what people have to say about the game. Like I said, the community is like maybe toxic at times, maybe a little bit too passionate, but super passionate about the game and really, really want it to succeed. And even if there's disagreements, like I might read one tweet and then the next one says the complete opposite thing. And that, I mean, that's totally fine. It's just, I love reading this stuff. I love hearing what people have to say. And it's a way that it's an angle kind of, I guess you could say, that I found that kind of works with, convincing them that this is what people want, because I actually like went about it and like I'm not just staying within my little circle of Twitch or Twitter or whatever. I'm actually branching out to all these different communities and saying, hey, like, what do you guys want? So yeah, I mean, that's definitely what I do. some of the game changers I think are definitely underappreciated. There's a lot of people that, whether they, are very vocal on socials or not, they are very vocal in the game changer chat. There's a lot of people that put a lot of effort into it for sure. And I think that, sometimes you get called a kiss ass or whatever. It's pretty much not true, like, at all, for I don't think anybody. A lot of people, like I said, very passionate. Pretty much everybody in there is really always gonna put, they're never just gonna say good job just because EA did something. They're always gonna put their 100% honest opinion in there, and I mean that's really it. So.
Yeah, I think you summed that up very, very well, just the entire Game Changer program and what you've done. And, I just want to reemphasize kind of what you mentioned was the differences between, everyone's different thoughts on the games. Like, it is impossible. We're not being paid by EA to be Game Changers. We have no say really in what goes on there. We just give our feedback and everything. But it is impossible to take the feedback that you get, even if you took just, 3 different people, the amount of different complaints, the different game modes that they would want, all of the different thoughts, like, it is going in all different directions. And like you mentioned, like, the differences between, arcadey and realistic gameplay, that's going to be like something that comes up forever. The debate, do we want something that's more fun and kind of entertaining and we're scoring Michigans every game? Or do we want dump and chase hockey where you're shooting low for rebounds and scoring, more legitimate, I guess you could put it, hockey goals? So that's something that EA is always juggling. We give them their feedback, and Leafy, of course, is doing an even better job of gathering everyone's feedback to try to get as many different opinions as possible. And I know something that you mentioned was, when we have a complaint such as like nerfing bumps, I mean, you have to consider, like, you can't just like type in the code, nerf bumps, like less bumps. Like, there's going to be different sliders and different things that they change that then are going to affect other things in the game, making it worse in other ways and better in some. So it's always, a teeter-totter of weighing these different balances and trying to figure out what the community truly does want. So we appreciate everything you're doing to make that easier for them, for sure.
Yeah, it's there's a lot of dynamics involved in that kind of stuff too, because especially when you have this game, like, I keep going back to the Nerf bumps, but it's such an easy one to talk about because it was just so prominent. But when you have that game where every time you touch the puck and somebody just flicks their hit stick and you lose the puck, and then it's really easy to just say Nerf bumps, but at the same time, like, what happened was they did do it, and then you couldn't lose the puck at all. And so, like, they kind of, it wasn't even necessarily like just a problem with those low speed kind of hits. It was like like some sort of design problem in there where, like, these exist, but they need to exist differently.
Right. Exactly. I think we do have another question in the queue. We'll go ahead and queue this one up. I believe we're getting some thoughts here on what people want to see in NHL 22. Again, if you guys have any thoughts that you want to toss in the chat, feel free to record a little message for us. We'll play it live on the air, and we'll give you a nice response here. Let's see what we got.
This is my question. Is there a way that they could possibly do a first to 3 World of Chell, kind of like 2K, where you can roam the pond?
Okay, so that's an entirely. I'm liking where you're going with this, Saucy Snipes. This is something I've been passionate about, and I think kind of is the future of sports gaming, if you will. So the neighborhood in NBA 2K. You play any 2K at all, Leafy?
I've played a little bit, but not so much.
Yeah,
I'm familiar
so
with the idea.
the idea is just incredible. So you're walking around the neighborhood, and now they have a giant city even. Takes you like 15 minutes to cross the entire map, but it's just an open world. They have courts available. You step up to the court, you can queue up with your friends, and then it's like just like actual basketball. Like, you'd go to the court, you'd wait out, you have to sit there and actually sometimes wait 5 to 10 minutes to get into a game. But I think that just kind of adds to the authenticity. So to your question, Saucy, you asked, could we see like a pond version of that in future NHL games? And I think that the answer is, I mean, it's certainly not outside the realm of possibility. It's a big investment. Like, you got to think the amount of people playing NBA 2K is just unreal. And to even fill the city, you need like hundreds of people online. But I could definitely see like a a game mode where you hop on the pond, and then they have, like a rink that you could walk to where you play ESHL, and then they have the ponds where, it like tosses sticks in the middle, and then the teams are randomly divvied up for drop-in games. I definitely could see that being something that EA, hopefully would go to at some point in the future, and something that kind of gets the more casual fan involved that maybe hasn't played a ton of hockey. It kind of gives them an inside look at what the actual game is about.
Yeah, I love the idea. The one thing that I don't love about the NBA neighborhood is the downtime. I feel like sometimes you could just like sit there on the court and just like you're just waiting for a game for like forever. And like I do like a queue for that. Like rather than just walking up and sitting there and waiting, I would actually prefer to search. But other than that, the idea is really cool. Everybody seems to love that. Everybody seems to think that that kind of thing should be the future of not only NHL but like FIFA too probably. Which I guess it's just something that EA probably would do like in probably that game and then branch out or whatever. But I do think that modes for World of Chell, whether it's limited time modes or just like more stuff like that, like first to three or whatever, is definitely a future for it. I think one thing that World of Chell kind of struggles with is incentives to play. Right now, before you used to have to grind for your card, and there's a whole debate on whether or not that's the right way to do things. But now, you're kind of just playing just to play. There is some cosmetics involved, but you actually don't really see them unless you play like the specific modes that use those cosmetics. So I think that, I think limited time modes would be really cool for World of Shell, actually. This is something I've brought up before, but I would love to see, like, weekends where they kind of just like you could do first to three, first goal wins, things like that. So the kind of stuff that's in Hut Rush, putting that into World of Chell, I think would be really cool. As well as like doing limited time modes where they kind of like completely change like attributes and stuff. Like let's say we have our builds that are normally there for all the time, but one weekend it's a limited time mode where you have 99 wrist shot accuracy, like things like that. I think would be super fun, a little bit something to kind of spice up the game that's pretty much always the same, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because like the people that play World of Chell love World of Chell and that's what they want to play. But yeah, I've always thought that limited time modes and different stuff like that would definitely be a really good way to spice up World of Chell and make it a little bit more fun for like a casual person that's maybe not super like invested in just always playing sixes.
Yeah, exactly. I think you kind of mentioned it. Hut Rust does a great job of that. I know a lot of my IRL friends that started playing Shell within the last couple of years, and they always had that complaint too. It just felt like they were getting destroyed whenever they hopped online. Like I know it's not for everyone. Obviously, me and you were more competitive. We like, grinded away at the leaderboards and whatnot. But a lot of people that pick up the game, they just want to, have fun. And I feel like that's kind of what Hut Rush does. You got your big hits, no penalties. Like you said, like having those specific modes with, maybe you can do the Michigan every single time you try it or whatever.
Yeah.
Just like different fun things where we could hop on, even as content creators, hop on, in with friends, get fun reactions and funny moments and, all sorts of things like that. So that's definitely something I could see them doing.
I think that would be like you said, great for content as well. 100% Michigan success rate would be amazing. I think like I don't know if they have quite the tech for that kind of stuff, but like I said, that kind of stuff is definitely something that I've talked about in the past. I think like Nuge and somebody else is also somebody that we've talked about doing LTMs and things like that in NHL. I mean, it's it's just taking stuff from other games, really. I mean, those kinds of things have been pretty popular in games like Fortnite and others. I know it's definitely a different scale, but at the same time, I mean, people love that stuff. Like I think recently, it was Halloween that COD Warzone had like some it was a Halloween like zombies thing, and like you would die, but then you were like a zombie and you were really fast and you could like go kill someone or pick something up to respawn. It was so fun. And I know that you only have so many options within a sports game. It's like your creativity with it is definitely limited, but there's opportunity there for sure. And I think the sooner they do stuff like that, I think it definitely makes it easier for not only for casual players to pick up and play, but also for people that grind the game and really just want a break from playing, sweaty games. They can do something fun, like you said, doing the Michigan 100% or whatever.
Yeah, and I think you could really tie it in with, stuff going on IRL, like specific things that happen in the NHL season, like maybe when All-Star weekend comes around, once we have that back, they add like a little All-Star event, like you do a shootout, you do like a shootout, you do a first goal wins, and then you have like targets that you shoot on a net, or something
Yeah.
like that. There's like different mini games that kind of could get people excited. And I know Rocket League, they had like a special mode for the Super Bowl where like you had spikes on at all times, and then you like actually grab the ball and run around with it, and you could pass it, and people were loving that. So more
Yeah.
ties into the actual NHL, and more special events like that. Like maybe during the summer you have roller hockey, and the guys are out there rolling around on rollerblades. I don't know. There's lots of potential.
It doesn't like you don't even really have to change anything. I guess it's just like the skins of it, like make it look like roller hockey instead of regular. But yeah, I mean anything like that, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing to point to other games either. Like a lot of times people will be like, oh, like look at this, like this is why MLB is so much better than NHL because they do this, this, and this, and it's not even like really complaining that NHL doesn't do it. It's just there's so many good things that make other games good that we could also take that and put in ours too.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, if a game's doing something right, like we shouldn't talk down to EA for taking that idea. Like I think exactly, yeah. I mean, Fortnite has kind of paved the way, and a lot of the things they're doing. I mean, they were one of the first games to do kind of the battle pass situation, and now you see, every single game, Call of Duty, Valorant, whatever it may be, is picking up the battle pass, and a lot of people like that. So it's not a bad thing at all to take features that people love. Leafy, it's been a great show. I want to ask you one last question, and it's a big one to end this.
All right.
I want you to give me, you've taken in all the feedback. You've been playing the game a while. I want you to give me the top 2 either features or game modes that you personally would like to see in NHL 22.
Oh boy.
A lot of pressure here. This is I heard that EA is actually adding in whatever you say here on this stereo. So 2 big ones.
All right. Honestly, for me, like I said, I love an arcade hockey game. I'm not talking like straight up NHL hits or 3-on-3 arcade, though I do love those too. Like I would, if they made another NHL 3-on-3 arcade, I don't know that I would play anything else for like forever.
That might honestly be the best. That might be the best NHL game ever made. Just like top to bottom, fun. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Bananas on the ice, all that.
Yeah, it was just amazing. So I'm not necessarily talking about that, but I do prefer, the style of some of the old gen NHL games. I think that they really maybe weren't as close to real life hockey as some people would like NHL to be. But for me, the fast pace and the creativity in those games really made them fun. And so like I would love to see a faster game. I think faster gameplay in general makes it so that, you have to make quicker decisions, and I think that definitely adds a bit of skill gap to it. So I would love to see, more of an arcade game style in terms of, puck control, being able to do like deke success rate, like actually seeing those dekes in effect, and using them like in the meta, actually having them be effective in the gameplay. So that, when you watch things like Leafs Gaming or GWC or whatever, you're actually watching like the top level players do this kind of stuff too. And that's really the big one for me, is like if I was choosing the direction of NHL, that's what I want to see from it. Maybe it's definitely not what everybody wants to hear, but that's my personal feeling of it. And you know what? Number 2, GM connected. I'll just say it. Like,
let's go. I was waiting for it.
I don't know that I'm really gonna be the big one to put so much time into it, but I would love to see it just honestly for everybody else. I would love to stop hearing about it too. So, if it's in the game, I don't have to worry about gathering all those feedback points anymore.
I mean, something you have to consider with GM Connected, me and you both as content creators, just imagine the weekly content. We have our schedule, we get to play others, like a nice 32-person league with all the different creators in the community, big and small. I think would 100%. Be probably some of the best content ever on Twitch and YouTube. So
yeah, I think if they were able to do like a functional, like fully functional thing like it looks in Madden or whatever, and we were really able to support, you know, a full 31 or 32 team league, yeah, I think that would be a blast, 100%.
I will agree with you on both. I think I was gonna give my two, but I mean, you literally just took both of them. So yeah, I mean, you know, I like the arcadey style. I'm
Yeah.
just looking for entertainment, looking for dangles, looking for fun moments, and you know, everything you described is kind of what I would feel as well. And GM Connected, of course, endless content for everyone. So me
Yeah.
and Leafy, you know, we're working together. We're gonna pass our thoughts to EA. We'll do everything we can. If you guys listening happen to have similar thoughts to us, we will be doing everything we can to push that and, you know, build this into the best game that it can be. And Leafy, it has been an incredible show. I appreciate you hopping on today. I think, you know, we talked about everything you're doing behind the scenes. We all really do appreciate you and everything that you're doing. If you want to just plug any channels, YouTube, Twitch, wherever people can find you, go ahead and do that now.
Oh yeah, sure. So at LeafyTV on Twitter, I stream on Twitch, LeafyTV, YouTube, LeafyTV. It's all there. Also Instagram, TikTok. I think there's an underscore at the end of both of those. But yeah, I post I stream like 4 days a week. I post on YouTube daily. And I tweet a lot. I tweet a lot about NHL. If you ever have any feedback that you want to give me, just tweet at me, and I will make sure it gets to the right place.
Sounds good. Hey, we appreciate you, Leafy. Thank you again for hopping on, and we'll certainly have you on again to discuss some more.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. I would love to do it again.
Cool. We'll talk soon. Peace.
Yeah, see ya.